Greetings everyone, greetings and welcome. In this video I just want to talk about my experiences that I have had so far in Pantheon Rise of the Fallen. I now have a little bit more experience grouping and experiencing some of the other camps in the game. So I've done the Goblin Cave camp. There's a few different entrances, but I've only experienced, from what I understand, is the southernmost entrance and the west entrance, which ironically it's a little bit more difficult because it's a very steep drop down into the caves. And one very interesting thing that I really like about these type of dungeons is immediately the lighting kind of changes and you can experience the ambience, the darkness, how quiet it is. Everything just kind of dissipates away and you realize you're in a deep, dark cave fraught with danger and peril. The small cave bats in the beginning are a little bit tricky and deceptive. Once you really get into it, you realize how tough everything can be. And I gotta say, as an original Everquest player, this is very engaging, and I often say this on stream a lot too, but the jobs and how they play, the classes rather, everyone is just so actively engaged in whatever they're doing, whether that's crowd control, whether that's damage, tanking, positioning, me as the healer. It's very, very intense. So it's one of those things you kind of just have to know. You kind of just have to know as a player. If you're looking at it, it does look like people are standing around or maybe sitting around and not doing much, but it is the most intense engagement I've experienced in a very long time. And I feel like this is what I was missing, you know, as a player who experienced Everquest back in the day, did raids, did some of the dungeons. This to me is truly like the beating heart of Pantheon, and this is everything that I needed, that I didn't know that I needed. So I'm so happy that I got to experience this. And so this is where the game really starts to shine. You know, as a cleric, I got a few of these groups. I had a great time. I met some great people. I suffered some heavy losses along the way, but ultimately it was very fun. So here we're just seeing some gameplay from the Goblin camp, with some of my commentary sort of overlapped to it. We had a ranger, an enchanter. He is the cleric, a paladin tank. I will say we were a little bit low. One of the frustrating things is things can go very wrong very quickly if people aren't prepared. There were several times throughout the run where, you know, we had to communicate, and I was in the middle of buffing when somebody accidentally pulled, or the enchanter was in the middle of buffing and we weren't ready, and then my mana was really low. So it's like, guys, come on, let's rest a little bit, let's wait a little bit, you know, everybody's very eager. And then the other exciting thing is too, as you go deeper and deeper and deeper, there's spawns behind you, there's patrols in front of you, you have to coordinate, you have to move quickly, you have to think quickly. Very, very exciting. One frustration that I have is loot that drops is not linked to the chat, so you kind of have to rely on the players to say, hey, you know, this is what dropped, there's, you know, +1 wisdom on this, maybe there's +1 stamina and 9 AC, does anyone want to roll on this? And we'll say, oh yes, you know, I would like to roll. or no, I pass, that's fine. And we kind of just have to figure it out and trust each other. That's one method. That's the sort of loot that's randomized, and you do that within the party. Everybody takes turns in loots, which I think is like the standard. Now, there's some people that like to turn on master loot and just kind of handle it that way. For me, I'm okay either way. I just want the opportunity to roll on something if it's an upgrade for me, which a lot of times it is. Now, here's a very tragic defeat that we encountered in the Goblin Cave. The party was woefully unprepared. It was very difficult, honestly, to keep everybody up. They didn't really give me time to meditate in between pools. Very sloppy crowd control. It was tricky. It was fun. We all learned for sure, but it was very difficult. One of the interesting things too is when you leave the cave after such an ordeal like that, it's so comforting just to see the light again. You know, it's very, very cool. And what happened here in this case was a few of the members of the community, Vendini, shout out to Vendini, he helped me out a lot with some bags. Very nice guild called Greybox. Always see them around. They managed to summon our corpses and give us a 25% raise. You kind of get to the point in the game where you really need to learn. You need to learn, okay, this is dangerous, we can't go in and die. And, you know, after a while, I usually give myself 3 tries, and I'm very hard on myself. Often if something goes wrong, I'll review the footage and just kind of observe what happened, see what I could have done better. One frustration that I have that we're going to see is a few things to note. So, the experience of grouping in dungeons and the class gameplay and the synergy is incredible. And as we all learn what the classes are capable of, I think we can all just synergize better. Now, for me, I have some familiarity with how these classes functioned in Everquest and World of Warcraft to some extent, so it kind of overlaps. It borrows from here, it borrows from there, so I have some idea. However, I have only played a Cleric, so I noticed like some of the classes were able to raise me at some points. I passed out, and you know how you have just a little bit of time, like with pain and suffering tries to strike you but misses or whatever. Well, there were a lot of times where I managed to get back up through someone bandaging me, or maybe even a shaman getting a heal over time spell or something. I need to understand how that works, because knowledge is power. And it's one of those things, the more we learn, the more we all grow as a community, the better we get. And everyone in this party learned quite a bit, and it was a huge learning experience for all of us. So that was a lot of fun. Here I'm just kind of looking at my armor that I got and my helmet. I got some really nice drops that, I mean, it really does make a difference, you know? A couple stats here, a couple pieces there. You can block a bit of extra damage, take more of an extra hit, heal. Very useful, and I've been able to get gear in all of my slots now for the most part. I shouldn't say all, but at least like the major pieces: chest piece, shield, belt, bracers, helmet, with some nice armor on it, which is really nice. So here, I'm experiencing Halnir's cave for the first time. Now, I gotta say, I am very impressed with the team because they did a fantastic job with the ambience. Here we're zoning into the cave. and immediately you can hear just kind of like exactly what a cave would sound like. It's very echoey, it's kind of quiet and foreboding and dark, and this was a really, really fun group. It was very difficult, and I'm actually very proud of myself because I am a level 9 cleric here, and meanwhile, the majority of the people in the party are level 12, 11. So it was very, very intimidating, but I think I did great. There was a couple mistakes made with all of us throughout the run. There was some poison that the tank didn't realize was there that got him. There were some crowd control issues that we encountered. So here we're grouping with a necromancer, 2 shamans, a ranger, and a paladin, and me as the cleric. Now, what ended up happening was, it was so funny and also kind of frustrating at the same time. So the tank is named Chad, and the ranger is named Chud. The names are very similar, and so see here, I was rearranging the nameplates. I would like the tank to be right at the very top. The shamans were down at the bottom because they were helping me off heal, so it was no problem. But one frustration that I have, whenever somebody dies, the list gets rearranged, and we encountered a horrific wipe that's just my absolute worst nightmare as a healer. So the necromancer failed to crowd control, immediately died, and I thought I had the tank targeted, Chad, but I actually had the ranger, Chud, targeted, and that really threw me off. So the combat is very fast, and one small gripe that I have is back in the day, and I'm sure people are very open to just jumping on voice chat, and it's no problem at all. We can certainly communicate, but if we're just a random pickup group and we're all talking to each other on the chat and, you know, trying to coordinate, and hey, this mess broke and we have an ad, and you know, I'm tanking this one and I'm healing this, you know, whatever. Everyone kind of is on the same page with what their role is, and that's all established up front. I get that, but in the heat of the moment, it's very difficult to communicate and just try to keep up with a crazy situation. So you'll see later in this footage when that happens. But overall, I wanted to say Halnir's Cave was one of the most amazing experiences that I had as a classic player. It was so much fun, and I was so excited. Now here we're fighting a named called Drawn Stalker. They hit very hard. Well, just these like crystalline sort of golems. They hit incredibly hard, so I was constantly keeping up my damage shield on the tank. And after this experience, actually, I learned so much. I came to a conclusion, and I've kind of been using this strategy, and it seems to work pretty well for me. So I have a very high level healing spell that heals for a lot, but it's 3 seconds. So usually in a very bad situation, it's great. Of course, it's absolutely wonderful, but I have found it more effective to just keep up the shield on the tank and then use my fast heal instead. And that also works with another ability that I have that allows me to get a melee hit and get a free cast within 15 seconds or so. I wish that was a ranged spell, but I kind of understand why they did it. Maybe they'll update that in the future, but it sucks having to get into melee range just to get that. You feel like you lose a little bit of time when you could cast. But clerics are really cool in that regard. They're kind of like battle clerics, I guess, a weaker sort of paladin, I guess you could say. Either way, it's been a lot of fun. Here we're coordinating some loot upgrades, which is very, very exciting. And yeah, overall, Halnir's Cave was so incredibly fun. It was dangerous, it was ambient, the sound design was amazing, the music is amazing. Now that I'm level 10, I cannot wait until I go there again. I cannot wait. Hopefully I made a decent reputation for myself and I get an invite back from these guys, because it was a very good group here. And here we have another one of these Dawn Stalkers. Now, whenever you get a single pull, everything's okay. Whenever there's multiples, things get a little skewy. And it's just one of those things between trying to make a decision, you know, do I want to help DPS a little? Sure, I have the time. No problem. Let's keep moving. And so that was one of the exciting things as we moved deeper and deeper into the cave. I started to get a little bit more nervous. And just looking back at the footage, you know, hindsight is always 20/20, but I think we did a great job communicating. Here we just have this kill. Experience and money was amazing. I was able to get some of my spells, get them in my bags, ready to go. And I'm glad I did, actually, because I leveled up here to 10. So that was a lot of fun. Here we have a drawn Kabbalist. One interesting thing to note is it was at this point in the game I started to realize that the abilities on my bar, I have to start being very selective with what I want. So I had to take away, at one point I took my divine damage spell that I have, I pretty much moved it off to the side in lieu of some healing abilities, and then I removed my undead nuke that I have, because that's not useful to me here. There is a cure disease type of a spell that clerics get, which is very useful here. So some of these enemies apply a debuff on the tank that lowers your attributes by 20%, all attributes, and that's horrible. So it's very tough to know how long that lasts, you know. Is it just a few seconds? Is it just a few ticks? Is it like a 5-minute debuff? I wish we had more information on the tooltips rather than buff ID, and I know that this is something that'll be fixed, but this was just a slight issue that I had as well. Now here is where things get horribly wrong for me here. So you notice the Necromancer is trying to mez, he goes down quickly, I can't even target him, and then the party gets rearranged. So I think that I have Chad targeted, but unfortunately I have Chud, and then by the time I switch over to Chad just goes down, and after that it's pretty much over. I instantly die. The shamans are struggling to keep up. Chud is struggling to off-tank. Boom, dead, everybody's dead. And just like that, everything came to an end. But it was so much fun. I really thoroughly enjoyed it. So there'll be more to come, but this was my first grouping experience, and I just loved it so very much. And this game has grown on me so much. And I cannot wait to be back in the world of Terminus, back into some dungeons, seeing what interesting drops I can find and what interesting group compositions we can come up with. Very exciting times. Thank you all so much, and hope you enjoyed this commentary. And I will see you in the next one. Take care, everyone, and have a wonderful day.